We're looking at a $1.3 million annual revenue apparel business on the market for $346,000. That sounds solid on paper, until you dig into the actual profit number and realize this seller is asking for a 2.5x multiple on just $138,000 in annual profit. Here's what most people miss: this isn't a high-margin business. We're talking 11% net margins, which means this is a volume play, not a cash cow. In the next 12 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the real numbers, show you where the risk lies, and tell you whether this deal makes sense at this price point. Spoiler alert, the verdict might surprise you. Let's start with the fundamentals. Monthly revenue is $107.4 thousand. That's solid. It means consistent order flow, predictable customer acquisition, and a business that's moving real units. The apparel space is competitive but scalable, which we'll come back to. What matters right now is the denominator. You're paying $346,000 to acquire $107.4 thousand in monthly top-line revenue. That's a 3.2x revenue multiple, which is reasonable for e-commerce. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is critical: the actual cash profit is only $12,000 per month. That's $107.4 thousand revenue generating $12,000 net profit. Do the math, that's an 11.2% net margin. In apparel, especially drop-shipped or wholesale-based models, 11% is thin. It's workable, but it leaves almost no room for error, scaling spend, or market changes. The asking price is $346,000 for $138,000 annual profit. That's a 2.5x SDE multiple. Now, let's put this in context. For e-commerce businesses, healthy multiples typically range from 2.5x to 3.5x SDE, depending on growth trajectory, customer base stickiness, and repeat purchase rates. A 2.5x multiple sounds okay, it's on the lower end, which initially looks attractive. But here's the catch: that multiple assumes you can actually extract $138,000 in profit next year. It assumes customer acquisition costs don't spike, margins don't compress, and the business doesn't lose a key supplier or platform. In apparel, those are massive assumptions. Supply chains are fragile. Fashion trends shift. Customer acquisition costs on platforms like TikTok and Instagram are rising every quarter. So the multiple, while technically reasonable, is priced for a business with zero growth risk. That's not realistic. Let's talk about what's actually driving this business. Apparel and accessories is a broad category, but it typically breaks down into three models: branded direct-to-consumer, wholesale to retail, or dropship aggregation. Based on the revenue scale and profit margin, my guess is this is either a wholesale play with moderate margins or a curated dropship model with built-in brand elements. Neither is bad, but both have specific risks. If it's wholesale, you're dependent on supplier relationships and inventory management. If it's dropship, you're competing on brand storytelling, not product uniqueness. The fact that we're seeing $107.4 thousand monthly revenue with 11% margins tells me this isn't a premium brand charging $200 plus per unit. It's volume-based. That means growth requires either more traffic or cheaper customer acquisition, both of which are getting harder in 2024. I need to know, is there a defensible brand moat here? Is it trending up or flat? The listing doesn't tell us that, and that's a red flag. Here's a hard truth about apparel e-commerce: customer acquisition cost is your biggest enemy. In 2023 to 2024, apparel CAC is brutal. You're looking at $15 to $40 per customer depending on traffic source, audience overlap, and market saturation. At $107.4 thousand monthly revenue, if your average order value is $50, that's roughly 2,150 orders per month. If your repeat customer rate is 30%, you need to acquire about 1,500 new customers monthly. That means you're spending $22.5 thousand to $60,000 per month just on customer acquisition, and that's optimistic. That eats directly into your 11% margin. Now, I'm seeing $12,000 net profit per month. If customer acquisition is running $25,000 to $40,000 monthly, which is industry standard, then the business is probably relying heavily on organic traffic, email retention, or a smaller paid spend than I'd expect. Either way, scaling this business profitably is hard. If you ran paid ads to grow revenue, margins compress immediately. Let's assess the deal structurally. You're paying $346,000 for a business doing $138,000 annual profit. That means your payback period is 2.5 years before you see a return on your investment, assuming profit stays flat and you don't reinvest anything back into growth. In acquisition math, we typically want a payback period of 18 to 24 months for a business with growth potential. At 2.5 years, you're paying for stability, not momentum. That's fine if this business is genuinely stable, meaning predictable profit, low churn, solid operational systems. But apparel businesses are rarely stable. Inventory seasons change. Supplier costs fluctuate. Fashion trends shift. One bad quarter could drop profit from $12,000 to $8,000, which blows your payback to 3+ years. The other concern, what happens to revenue and profit if you leave paid acquisition flat and just operate it? A lot of e-commerce businesses decline 5 to 15% year-over-year without active marketing push. If this business drops 10% annually, your $12,000 monthly profit becomes $10,800, then $9,700. Now your payback is 3.5+ years. That's a problematic timeline. Now let's talk operational reality. When you acquire an e-commerce apparel business, you're inheriting supplier relationships, inventory commitments, customer data, and operational workflows. The critical questions you need answered before signing: first, what's the customer composition? How many are repeat customers versus one-time buyers? If repeat rate is below 25%, this is a leaky bucket. Second, where is traffic coming from? Paid ads, organic, email, social. If it's 80% paid, you're entirely dependent on paid acquisition cost stability, which is shrinking. Third, are there any supplier concentration risks? If 40% of product comes from one supplier, a relationship break or price increase tanks margins. Fourth, what's the inventory situation? Apparel typically means 30 to 90-day payment terms and seasonal buying cycles. If you inherit $80,000 to $120,000 in slow-moving inventory, that capital is trapped. These operational details matter more than the revenue number. The listing probably glosses over them. That's where deals go bad. Let's talk about what you'd actually be buying. The assets in this deal are likely a Shopify store or similar platform, email list, social media accounts, supplier relationships, and brand positioning. The Shopify store itself. Minimal value. Email list. Depends on size and engagement, but with 2,150 orders monthly, assuming 30% repeat rate, you're probably looking at 5,000 to 8,000 engaged subscribers. That's decent but not extraordinary. Social accounts. Only valuable if they have true engagement and follower quality. Here's the hard part: none of these assets are defensible in a legal sense. A competitor could build the same Shopify store, create a similar brand aesthetic, source similar products, and launch ads tomorrow. You're buying traffic acquisition history, customer relationships, and operational efficiency, not a patent or exclusive supplier deal. That means this deal's value is entirely dependent on your ability to operate it as well as the current owner. If the current owner has nuanced supplier relationships or brand positioning knowledge they don't transfer, you'll see immediate profit decline. Make sure your due diligence includes a thorough operational handoff plan and post-close support. Here's my take on whether this deal is worth $346,000. If you're buying this as a hands-off income stream, pass. The margin is too thin, the payback is too long, and apparel businesses require active management. You'd need to be hands-on with supplier negotiations, marketing strategy, and trend analysis. If you're buying it as an operational project where you plan to implement better systems, negotiate better suppliers, and optimize paid spend, then it becomes interesting, but only if you're confident you can improve margins from 11% to 13 to 15%. That's realistic. Better supplier terms, smarter paid acquisition, and email optimization could push profit from $12,000 to $15,000 to $18,000 monthly. At that point, the deal becomes a 2.0x to 2.3x multiple, which is solid. But that requires work. It also requires capital for experimentation and potentially inventory investment. So the real question is, do you have the operational expertise to improve this business, or are you buying it to hold flat? If it's the latter, the price is steep. If it's the former, it's interesting but risky. Let's talk risk honestly. Apparel e-commerce specifically faces several headwinds right now. First, customer acquisition costs are rising, TikTok Shop is fragmenting the audience, iOS privacy changes limit targeting, and CPMs are up 20 to 30% year over year. Second, margins are compressing across the sector as supplier costs normalize post-COVID and freight stabilizes. Third, competition is consolidating. Larger players with better funding can outbid you on ads and undercut on price. Fourth, seasonality is real. Q4 is Christmas, Q2 is summer. Flat months hurt cash flow. And fifth, inventory risk is perpetual. Fashion trends shift. Styles that sold in 2023 don't move in 2024. You could inherit $50,000 in dead inventory that you have to liquidate at a loss. Given these risks, a 2.5x multiple doesn't feel like a margin of safety. It feels fairly priced for an optimistic scenario. If anything goes sideways, you're underwater quickly. My final verdict: this is a fair deal at a fair price, but not a compelling opportunity. You'd be paying market rate for a stable, mid-size apparel business with thin margins. The multiple is reasonable, but it's priced for zero growth and zero problems, neither of which exist in reality. If you have specific operational expertise in apparel sourcing, paid acquisition, or brand positioning, and you genuinely believe you can improve margins and customer retention, then it's worth a closer look. Negotiate down slightly if possible, target $320,000 to $330,000 to create a small margin of safety. But if you're looking for a hands-off income stream or a guaranteed 25% plus annual return, keep looking. This business requires active management, operational skill, and some capital for reinvestment. For the right operator with the right skills and the right timeline, it's a solid acquisition. For most buyers, it's a pass. If you want deals like this before anyone else, subscribe to Deal Alert AI and hit the bell. We drop a new breakdown every single day.